Amanda and I were just chatting. There are only three of us, so I think we can tailor this a little bit more to what it is that you're hoping for. And she was sharing with me, just trying to make the transition from a program that is preparing for online teaching to what do I do with an FYE? So, Kim, what were your hopes for today? What were you?
Deb and I come in and just look to refresh and being open and not getting stuck in my way of doing things. Back to my class again. I've changed over to new course material. It is hard for me to get all the interactive stuff in. Last year, after we couldn't do group projects or group activities because of the social distancing, and now they can be together, and I'm just trying to freshen up on my shift back to more interactive work in the classroom versus the sage on the stage, type.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of work a little bit off of what I had prepared, and then we can also work a little bit more on the fly. So there's some stuff in there that I think will address some of what both of you have just talked about. But I'm not going to make you do some of the activities that were designed for a larger group because that just feels awkward. But I do, one of the questions that I had planned to have people write on for just a couple of minutes was this: what do you think makes? Well, let me think how. Let me actually look how I phrased this because I pondered over the wording of it. If I were to ask you what causes learning to happen in the classroom, how would you answer that? And that's for both of you, not just Kim.
I would say it's practicing or applying a new skill.
Okay, practicing or applying a new skill.
Information another way.
Okay, Amanda, what about you for your FYE?
I look at it as more of applying the material for one thing, but also relating them to being able to relate the material to what they are currently experiencing or have experienced. So that's the way that I look at it as far as how they're going to learn.
Okay. And I think we're all on the same page here. I love the way I had a book that I assigned with my FYE a couple of years ago called The New Science of Learning. And it's written by Todd Zakrajsek and, I can't remember his co-author's name. Todd was here at LR, I think 2 years ago as one of our faculty workday speakers, but they're really digging into the science of it, and their answer is that learning has happened once the neural configurations in the brain are remapped. That's what learning is when we develop those pathways in our brain that allow us to do either to recall content or to apply skills in new ways, Kim, as you put it. And they, like the two of you, I think, point out that there are lots of different ways that can happen, and there are some that are more effective than others. We'll come back to that in just a minute. The other thing that I'm interested in, this is probably a loaded question. This is being recorded, so you may want to be careful how you answer. But if you think back to, were both of you at faculty assembly on Wednesday last week?
Yes, I was.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just curious, honestly, when someone gets up there to talk to us, those administrative reports at the beginning, how long do they have before your attention starts to flag?
That is a loaded question. I think it depends on the type of the report. If it's finances, or it's the topic, or a Senate process, or bantering back and forth about the rules, I begin to disengage and tap out. When we're talking about new processes or events or upcoming, I tend to click in a lot longer.
Okay, Amanda, what about you?
Going over process and minutia, I check out.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of different, I guess, because I'm staff, so I'm not like full faculty. So some of the things that they talk about when they were talking about the course loads and things like that, those I was just kind of tuned out on because number one, I didn't know anything about it. But then when it was things related to like COVID, like I really wanted to know. So if it was something that I felt familiar with or I was interested in, then yeah, I was like zoned in on it. But otherwise, I was just kind of tuned out and didn't really understand what all they were going over because it didn't really apply to me.
So you're hitting on one of the key things, I think, which is the relevance question. You know, if I can connect this to me in some meaningful way, then my attention span tends to be a little bit longer. I will confess to you that in a typical administrative report, you got about 10 minutes for me before I'm ready to start checking my phone and looking on Facebook and stuff like that. And maybe other faculty have longer attention spans than I do. But honestly, that's a pretty typical, and when we limited their reports to 15 minutes at the beginning, I kind of went, oh, that makes sense because that's about how long you've got me before I'm done. Because
excuse me, y'all, Devin, Amanda, I've got a student who texted me about my test. There's a problem with access in there. So I'm gonna slip out and I'm gonna come back, okay, and handle that for her.
No problem at all. So, Amanda, one of the things that that has been really helpful for me in thinking about what I'm doing in a classroom, and I'm actually going to share my screen at this point because I want you to be able to read this in addition. Oh, PowerPoint, how do you work? It looks like I get to start from the beginning. This is Mary Ellen Weimer, who has written the book that this quote is from is called Learner-Centered Teaching. She has, sorry, I'm trying to drag Zoom windows around so I can see, and I think I just clicked too far. She has since changed her language to learning-centered teaching, which I really like because it puts the learning process at the center of what we're doing, not necessarily any individual person. But she is talking about the contrast between the traditional approaches that we're probably familiar with, where learning was guided by rules, by sticks and carrots. And she writes, our heavy-handed approaches do produce results. And I love that because one of the things that I encounter often is our faculty said, well, the way that I learned worked for me. And I think there's actually some truth in that. I learned a lot in college. But I love the way she goes on with this. Students end up learning in our rule-oriented environment and as a result of the motivational sticks we apply. At issue is whether these are the only or best conditions for learning and whether their short-term gains are offset by long-term liabilities. With learning-centered approaches, they, and this is faculty, work to build spaces in which students can begin to move, grow, mature, and act responsibly about their own learning and toward the learning of others. So that's kind of the overall philosophy that I bring to the table, I think, is that our goal as faculty is to build those spaces, not to deliver content, not to hit with the sticks of grades, but to create spaces where that learning can happen. And some characteristics of effective class sessions, which is probably the shortest unit that we have. And I'm going to pause here just to say, hi, Claire, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Devin. Sorry I'm a little bit late here.
Oh, it's okay. Center for Teaching and Learning stuff, we are so relaxed, like it's all good. Do you know Amanda and Kim yet?
No, I don't know them. I've never met them.
Okay, why don't we do real quick introductions then? Kim, are you with us to do an introduction? You can shake your head if you're not. Okay.
She's muted.
Yeah, I'm out now.
Oh,
Hi,
there
Claire.
you go.
I'm Kim Pennington. I'm in Solmess Institute dietetic internship in College of Health Sciences.
Hi, Kim. I'm also in College of Health Sciences. I'm in public health. I'm teaching online from South Carolina, so I'm teaching in the MPH courses, and I'm also teaching a community health course undergraduate program.
Wonderful. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'll be up on campus on Friday this week. Thursday and
Okay.
Friday, actually. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I'm in the building
Okay, I'll stop by and say hi.
in Solmas Institute in Macquarie.
Okay. Okay, that's where my office is. Nice to meet you.
And Amanda, if you can give a quick introduction.
Hello, my name is Amanda Hood Abernathy. I'm just a staff member here at the university, but I'm also teaching adjunct. I'm teaching an FYE course that I developed this summer that's called Health and Beyond. I'm also basically a member of the College of Health Sciences too. I'm over here in the PA building off campus.
Hi, Amanda. It's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you.
And I'm going to back up and say you're not just a staff member. You are one of all of us who are working here together on this. So we're glad you're here with us today, Amanda. Some of the characteristics that Zakrajcek and Weimer would point to for our class sessions, because that really is kind of the shortest unit of time we get with them, would be that they have a clear purpose. So every day we walk in and it's clear, what are the learning outcomes for today? What are we hoping to accomplish in this 50 minutes or this 75 minutes? Or Claire, in the case of an online course, in this unit of the online space. Structure. So a clear, we're going to move from a beginning to a middle to an end. Appropriate activities, again, that sense of creating the space where learning can happen. So activities that facilitate learning, that engage students, because as you just pointed out with faculty assembly, like if it's something that interests me or that I feel like I have a stake in, then it's easier to learn from it. If it's totally irrelevant to me or I don't understand the relevance, it's much harder. And then of appropriate length, and I think that's a judgment call. My experience has been that when I was an undergrad student and my undergrad students, the appropriate length for any given activity is actually fairly short because attention spans start to wander. When I was a graduate student, they could be longer because I had learned how to be engaged with something for a longer period of time. And I was more interested in it. And then finally, a synthesis, a wrapping up of, what has happened in this 50 minutes or this 75 minutes? What did we learn? I'll share with you a story, and Kim, you may have heard me tell this story before. I went into a class that a colleague of ours was teaching a few years ago. And this is a service that the Center for Teaching and Learning offers to anyone, is just to come in at mid-semester and have a quick chat with your students and find out what's going on. And the first question that I always ask the students is, what are you learning in this class? Because if they say one thing and it totally doesn't align with what you as the professor think they're learning, that points to some places where maybe better communication needs to happen. And in this class, the students are, we're not learning anything there. And I just kind of fundamentally reject that premise. Like I have trouble believing that you're really not learning anything. So we pushed on it a little bit. We said, yeah, we're having these wonderful conversations that are really fundamentally changing the way that we're seeing this topic and this topic and this topic. But we're not learning anything. At that point, I stepped into professor mode and said, well, wait a minute now. If you just told me that your worldview of this particular topic has changed, that is learning. And they said, oh, we never thought of it like that. And as we dug into it, we realized that what was happening in that class was that the synthesis was not happening at the end of each class session. What have we learned today together? And that was just a very simple addition to the class that the professor was able to make. And at the end of the semester, the students were much, much clearer on what it was that they had learned. So the question then becomes, how do we get there? And I'm going to share with you a document. I had not thought this through very well, trying to remember how this all works. I will share this with you using your emails in just a minute, but let me see if I can download it. and put it in the chat file for you. Sometimes Zoom just makes me scratch my head. Like they keep changing things. So I'm going to put this file in the chat window for you. And again, I will share it with you as well on with my OneDrive. This is a template that's been put together based on a lot of this research that Zakrajcek and Weimer and others have done that I have found is very effective. Amanda, this has been especially helpful for my first year students, if I can think in these terms. So, you know, this is my planning document and have at the beginning, what are the outcomes? So by the time that this class is over, what is it that students should be able to do? They were not able to do when they came in, or what dispositions should they have developed? What reflections should they have had? 5 minutes at the beginning to cover all of that administrative work. So, you know, taking attendance, connecting to the previous class. So what did we learn in our last class session? What did you learn through the readings or whatever you did before coming in? Then connection to what's coming today, a preview. What are we going to do? Then I will usually move into about a 15-minute long activity. So what is something that the students can do that will help them meet one of the learning outcomes for the day? You know, I increasingly find that I'm not of the mindset that all lecture is terrible, although there was a period of time where that was kind of the movement in teaching and learning. But I think a legitimate activity is for 15 minutes, what information do I need to provide that's going to help the students meet those learning outcomes? And how am I going to keep them engaged with that? Then we'll move into kind of a 5-minute transition. A quick summary of what we just learned, rearrange furniture if needed, answer any quick questions. Sometimes if it's a 75-minute class and I'm going to add another one of these blocks, I'll give them a 3-minute cell phone break, you know, check your text messages. And then again, a second activity that connects to the first, that builds on what we just did, before moving to kind of an ending point where we do that work of summarizing, synthesizing, and looking ahead. Usually at the beginning of the semester, I'm going to do that work. A colleague of mine who is not here anymore, but she once got a set of student ratings where they, you know, she used a lot of these techniques and the students said, we just want her to be the professor. I was like, what does that mean exactly? And what we found was that they wanted her to do that work of explaining to them what they had learned. So again, she took 5 minutes at the end of class, did that synthesis work, and it totally changed the environment of the classroom. As the semester goes along, I might start finding ways to ask the students to do that work. So you all tell me what you learned. Sometimes in writing, give me an exit card that tells me what you learned about today, what you felt like you didn't learn that you should have. And again, if this is a 75-minute class, I'm just going to add another 5-minute transition with another activity for my undergrad classes. If it's a senior level English course, I might simply expand the 2 activities so that they fill, you know, they're more in depth or fill more of the time. So I'm going to pause there and ask if there are questions about the template that I'm providing here. I will say this is not a one size fits all. I don't have every single class session set up this way. Last class with my humanities students, they were doing 90-second presentations, and that took the whole class, just one after another. But you know, that's a different kind of a class. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to stop sharing and pause for questions or comments.
And it's Claire. I have a comment and
Sure.
kind of a question too.
Yeah.
So my comment is this. Many years ago, I ran a program. Of course, this was not a formal teaching program, but it was a program in one of the prisons here in South Carolina. And I learned very quickly there was a significant degree of literacy levels in the program that I was running. So I had to tailor my coursework because I was teaching about addictions and different things along those lines. I had to tailor my coursework for all the different abilities that I had in the classroom in the prison. And it was very challenging. And it was one of my first jobs after graduation. And I learned very quickly just creative ways to implement other ways to learn. I did believe it or not, I did a Twister game. I didn't do it. I was the MC with the inmates and asking them questions to gauge what they had learned. And they had fun with it, number one. That was the best part. And number two, it also gave me back information as how well they were paying attention when I was teaching, so that I could kind of evaluate what they had actually learned. So there are kinds of creative ways. And I'm listening to you here. And since I'm teaching completely online right now, my question is, I can adapt some of these kinds of activities, not so much the activities, but maybe the exit information, any questions, anything that's not clear to my students online as well. Don't you think I could do it that way?
Yes, and actually I do that in my
Perfect.
online classes. That's I
Perfect.
use a Microsoft form,
Okay.
and you can Jenny can show you how to do this, or I can show you how to do it. You can actually create the form and then embed it right on a Canvas page.
Oh, I love that. I love this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Because the online teaching, although I've done it in the past, the intensity of it at this point in my career is a whole lot different than what I've done in the past. So I'm just trying to pick up skills as I go along and just kind of get a system down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have a question about the outcomes.
Yes.
So like I have created my outcomes for each of my modules. Would I use the same outcomes that I've created for the entire module and I guess divide that up into my 3 days that I go in to teach? Is that typically how you would do to make sure that you're matching?
I typically think of the unit level outcomes as something that I can break down into even smaller ones.
Okay.
So I'm going to use writing as an example because we're all familiar with writing, and it's also my kind of my wheelhouse for teaching. But if one of my unit level outcomes is for students to write cohesive paragraphs, which seems like a reasonable, honestly, that seems like a reasonable thing to expect from them before they get here. But if we're teaching it in a class, it seems like that's a reasonable outcome for a 2-week period, perhaps. And one of my learning outcomes for a given day will be that they can articulate what a clear topic sentence is. And then a second one for that same class might be to create effective topic sentences. So that's part of that writing a cohesive paragraph, but I'm not going to try to do all of it in one class session.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then the next class might be, okay, so last time we looked at topic sentences. Today we're going to look at how we support topic sentences. What counts as evidence? And we'll have a learning outcome related to evidence.
Okay. Thank you.
So any other questions on that? What I would like for you to do, and this I'm actually very interested in, we'll see how it goes. I would like you to take, and this is going to be rough, this is going to be brainstorming, this is going to be, not polished, because nobody would ever plan a whole class. Well, yes, I would actually, sometimes out of necessity, but you don't intentionally plan your class session in a 10-minute block. Like give yourself 10 minutes to plan the whole 50-minute class session. We've probably all been there where life happens and all of a sudden it's 9:30 and your class starts at 9:45 and you're scrambling going, what am I doing today? But ideally, we've got more time than that. But I would like for you to take 10 minutes, and Kim, you can feel free to turn camera off. 10 minutes to think about a class that you have coming up in the next week, or Claire, in your case, to take a look at one of the module level things and do this work. Just kind of sketch in, and then come back and present to us in a 2-minute, what are you thinking? And let's take a look at what happens.
Okay.
Okay, so Devin, can you clarify, you want us to plan the what? The objectives in a 10-minute block, or
Oh no, so I want a whole class. Like think
a
of
whole
something that
class
you're
in
gonna-
10 minutes?
Think of something that
Okay.
you're going to teach this week and take the next 10 minutes to use that template to plan how you might do it. And
Oh,
again,
okay, got it.
you're sketching and you're making notes. This is not finished or polished. This is just cranking out ideas for it. So we'll take until 10:42. And I'm going to turn my camera off at this point so that you can work without having to look at me.
Devin, I can't get the template to download.
Give me just a second. I'm getting ready to do something that may help with that.
It's coming up in System 32.
Interesting. Try the one that I just sent to you in my email.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Bob, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm here.
I'm going to pop us into a breakout room real quick, if that's okay. So I will assign you to that room and then open, and then I'll jump into it. The other participants are working on something, and that way we can talk without without them having to listen to us.
Gotcha.
Hey y'all, let's pull this back. I thought that I had shared with you a document that you could download, and it looks like I shared with you a document that you could edit. So I hope that didn't mess things up too badly.
I was able to download it, Devin.
Good.
Yeah.
I saw that and then I couldn't figure out how to make it edit or to make it read only so that you would have to download it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't have Claire, Amanda, and Kim fighting each other for editing on this document. Kim, are you still there? Kim may have stepped away. I know she had a.
Yes, I am. I'm here.
You want to share with us real quickly what you planned? You are muted again.
Sorry about that. Okay. So, all right. So I'm disabled.
Oh, you're wanting to share screen. I can do that.
Oh, no. That's okay. I can share because it's pretty quick and dirty. So I did a template. My sessions are an hour and 15 minutes, so I have a little bit longer. But do you want me to share my outcomes and what I think I'll do?
Sure.
Okay. So my session is on, we're starting the macros, carbs, proteins, and fats. So after the class, they should be able to describe the role of carbs in the body, provide food examples of various categories of, for example, simple and complex of carbohydrate, and then estimate carbohydrate needs per day using formulas per prior class on the distribution of macros. So they do a sign-in sheet for me. I don't have to spend a lot of time on that, but my connection to my previous class is to describe the Healthy People 2020 goals and how macros fit into that. One thing I wanted to introduce was misinformation about carbohydrates, especially since they're the demon food right now. It seems like a lot of misinformation around carbohydrates, and also bringing in the sugar topic. So that was how I was going to introduce that. Can you be addicted to sugar? Does sugar cause inflammation? Is sugar toxic? One thing I wanted to do with my activity is I have food photo cards, and I was going to ask them to select food card examples of simple carbs, complex carbs, and fiber-rich foods. I was kind of getting in the weeds here with my next activity with the some of the discussion on my end, but I wanted to have a follow-up connection, what I call a connection activity, where students receive a card with a term, for example, glucose and fructose, and then they can mill around the room to find their partner with the term. For example, your disaccharide, breaking them down to monosaccharides. For example, is the simple carbohydrates.
I love that.
I was stuck with the ending. So you want me to stop? Am I going overboard?
That's good. I mean, that gives us a sense of what you're thinking. But I think movement. We know a lot about movement and learning, that those two things go together. So I love that second activity. Claire, how are you thinking about applying this to the online environment?
I'm sorry, I was muted and trying to talk at the same time there. Okay, so what I did was, so for one of my MPH classes, which is a health communication class, we're learning about framing and reframing public health messages to reach a broader audience and to reach specific audiences that we might be working with. So we might be, because we just recently read a study that was done in Southern Appalachia. And of course, poverty levels are high, education levels are low, obesity is high, diabetes is high. Malnutrition or undernutrition or overnutrition in terms of obesity is also very high. So we've got this kind of mix of things. So my activity is basically, I want students, my outcomes, I'm not sure if I did this right because I did it super quick. I want students to understand readability levels of brochures and things like that that are at health departments that go to all kinds of places and resources and things like that. And I want students, my main outcome is the understanding and learning about readability levels in terms of public health messages and brochures and things like that. And then Students will learn about framing and reframing public health messages from the level of readability of brochures. I'm starting with brochures, and this can go to a whole bunch of other areas and issues, but I figured for something online, brochures would be good. So students, basically, I don't take attendance, of course, because I'm not teaching live, but the discussion boards and that kind of communication is my way to keep track of students doing things in the class. So those discussion board check-ins, and then connecting to previous classes on what was learned about readability and formulas, because we talked about that in the beginning of the semester, a couple week and a half ago, about readability levels, how to calculate them, how to compare different calculations of readability levels. And in order to reach the general public, and I'm talking a whole host of people, we want readability levels, especially on brochures, to be at about a 6th grade level, between 6th and 8th grade. But 6th grade is prime because we have a lot of people in the United States where English is not their first language, it's not their native language. So most of the guidelines talk about 6th grade and below. So students online are supposed to go out to their local health departments and or physicians' offices, those sorts of places, to gather up some brochures. And I say in here, in our previous class, we gathered brochures from health departments and calculated reading levels of these brochures. So in this section of the online program, we're going to go over those reading levels, quickly go over those. And then we're going to summarize in the transition phase. Again, I'm not sure I'm doing this right here, but we're going to summarize basically what those reading levels are, how we calculated them, looking at different formulas for calculating reading levels. And then what students are going to do for this current activity is to take one of these brochures that had a higher reading level than what it was supposed to have, and to reframe the message and then recalculate the reading level and present this on the discussion board. And that's kind of about where I stopped. I really didn't get much further than that.
That sounds like pretty good for 10 minutes.
Well, I was scrambling to do it. And I did, like I said, in the first week or second module, I can't remember now, I did a readability exercise with students and we looked at these things. Later on in the semester, I'm hoping to have the students do their own brochures with appropriate reading levels for, the general population. So that's kind of where this idea came from.
I love it. You've adapted the structure for a time-bound class session to that online space, which also is time-bound. I mean, it's a different kind of timing.
Yes.
Awesome. So.
Yes. Well, in a live class, I mean, I could do a similar kind of thing. I mean, for homework, I would have students go out and gather up some brochures, bring them to class, and we could calculate reading levels based on a couple different formulas. And usually, if you do 2 different formulas, they should be fairly close. But, every now and then you'll get one formula that says, oh, this is an 8th grade level. You'll get another formula that says this is 13th grade level, which is college level. And so that's a big problem there. So how can we reframe that message so it really reaches everybody that we want it to reach? And so it's fun to do, actually. And years ago, I was sitting waiting for a doctor's appointment, and the doctor was late by an hour. So I calculated his brochures in the office. I didn't have anything else to do. And so then when I went in to see him, he said, "Well, I'm sorry for being late." I said, "Well, that's okay." I said, "I calculated the reading levels of your brochures." And he goes, "Well, how'd I do?" I said, "You failed." I said, "They're at 12th grade and beyond." I said, "You're not reaching your whole population that you want to reach."
Fun. Amanda, I know we're coming up on the 11 o'clock. Do you have time to share?
I'm sorry.
No, it's my timing that was off, not you. I just want to make sure, Amanda, Kim, I know you mostly teach afternoons, right? Afternoons, evenings, and Claire, I know you're online. I want to make sure you don't have classes to get to, but Amanda, if you have time, I'd love to hear.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, my class at 12, so I've got some time.
Okay.
Yes, so in my class, it's called Health and Beyond, and we talk a lot about healthcare. So that's kind of the way I'm driven in that direction. So I've got for my outcomes for the students to explain the role of low-income communities on informal healthcare, and then locate a journal article on individuals seeking informal healthcare. And then I also want them to be able to summarize that article. So my first activity is more like a group exercise where they come together in groups of 4. One of my groups would actually have 5 people in that, just because of the odd number. And during that activity is where they would locate an article, read the article, in their groups, and then be able to summarize what that article is about. Because I know that is getting to the main part of FYE, and being able to locate and find resources, and also being able to summarize and paraphrase what they found. And then the second activity, I was sort of torn. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that in groups again or more individually. But what I was thinking is I actually have them start thinking about the resources or the things out there that people seek the informal healthcare for. Like, for instance, they can't afford a walker, so they get it from someone else that has a walker that's not using it, or a cane or something like that. So that was one of the other activities that I was thinking about, just torn between whether or not that would be a group activity or if that would be an individual activity. Because ultimately at the end of it, I would want them to be able to describe why, why in that instance are people seeking those informal means for healthcare, and make that part of like the exit card and kind of like what they learned. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I love the way you're the thinking about the exit card there as getting the students pushing towards the next thing. So kind of getting that higher level thinking involved there. Cool. And Bob, you joined us a little bit late, so I don't know that you had time to go through this, but anything you would want to contribute there? You
No,
do know
I think,
about Bob, right? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah. No, I'm still struggling what a bite-size, activity would be in a close to 3-hour lecture session that I'm trying to coordinate these activities, to try to either break it down into 3 40-minute sessions, interrupted with the summary kind of a, synthesis session, and then start another one and a third one in one class session. It's kind of a logistic question, I guess.
It might help to think, and this is for the others as well. I actually find 50 minutes is too short. Like, I don't ever get accomplished what I need to in 50 minutes. And what I've started telling my students is that they should think of each week as being like one long 3-hour class session with big breaks in between some of the activities. So I don't know that I would do that with first year students, but with my upper level students, we do. And we'll tell them, you may get to the end of class Wednesday and feel like, I'm not quite sure what we're doing this week. And we will make sure by the end of class on Friday that it is all tied nicely together. So I like the idea of thinking of it as either 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 separate boxes, if you will, where you can work with stuff. I think that would be effective for a lot of our students. I do think you said you teach seniors. I do think with seniors, I would probably be thinking of it as kind of 2 75-minute blocks of time. And what am I going to accomplish in the first one? What am I going to accomplish in the second one?
Yeah. Yeah.
We are coming right up on 11 o'clock. Kim, Amanda, and Bob, I have a book that I want to send you, unless you already have it. I will share my screen. And Claire, I've got one for you too, but it may be a different one. I will leave that up to you. This is a book called Teaching for Learning. Kim, do you have a copy of this already? So I will not send you one. Amanda, do you have one by any chance?
Wait a minute. No, I do not.
Okay.
No,
So-
I do not have that either.
Me neither.
These
No, I
are,
don't have it either.
these are three, we've had two of these people here at LR, they're fantastic, but these are 101 activities that you can do in a class session.
Wow.
They're broken
Wow.
up by category. So if I'm going to lecture, what are some ways that I can get students more engaged in the lecturing process? If I am doing class discussion, what are some ways to do this? What are games that I can use to promote learning? This is one of my top 2 or 3 books for any faculty member. Claire, the reason I said I would ask you, this is the 2nd edition. One of the complaints about the 1st edition was like, this is face-to-face teaching.
Okay.
I have not looked at the 2nd edition yet, but they note that it features critical new content on adapting techniques for use in online courses. I tend to trust the authors here that if they say that they're doing that, they really are.
Okay.
But there is also this book that I know is good. Small Teaching Online, Applying Learning Science in Online Classes.
Okay.
So let me know which of those 2 you think would be more useful for you and send me your address and I will have it shipped to you.
Okay. Okay.
Fiona, Amanda, and Bob, if you want a copy of Teaching for Learning, send me your address by email and I will order it and get it sent to you. So just as kind of a follow-up and a way to continue what we started today.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And as a final wrap up, what I hope we took away from this is just a structure for kind of thinking about activities that promote that engaged learning with students. I do know that, any of us in the Center for Teaching and Learning, as you're thinking about this, if you want to brainstorm ideas with us, get in touch with us, either email or our Center for Teaching and Learning bookings page. Claire, I know you've already been working with Jenny,
Yes.
but she's really good with this kind of stuff in the online
Yes.
environment. So we are here to help. We are right at 11. I hope you all have a wonderful day and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you, everybody. Nice to meet y'all.
Thank you.
Thank
Talk to you
you.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.